This week's fundamental is get the facts. There's always more to the story than you think. Learn to ask questions and gather the facts before jumping to conclusions and making judgments. Be curious about additional information that might yield a more complete picture. How many times have you observed a situation or jumped into a conversation where you had pieces of the information and quickly came to a conclusion, only to learn that your initial conclusion proved to be completely incorrect? I'll give you an example. Imagine you see a colleague leaving work early several days a week. What might you think? You might conclude that that person is slacking off and not putting in his hours or pulling their full weight for the team. Or you might believe that his manager isn't aware and isn't holding him accountable to working full days. Now, imagine that you find out that your colleague left early several days for a medical treatment for a major illness, that despite his health challenges, your colleague has been working from home every evening and most weekends to make up for the lost time. Would this change your perspective? It's human nature to assume the worst and to jump to conclusions. So we should also remember an earlier fundamental, assume positive intent. We all enter conversations with a set of assumptions and biases. And sometimes those assumptions and biases leave us with some egg on our face. There's usually more to the story than we know or than it first appears. That's why it's so important to avoid forming quick judgments or assume we know what's happening. Instead, we should be more curious, ask more questions, and fill out the rest of the picture. This is true in how we deal with a client problem, how we deal with each other, and even our family members. One of the keys to this fundamental is understanding the difference between a fact and an interpretation. In my earlier example, it's a fact that your colleague left early. The colleague is slacking and not pulling his weight is just one interpretation from that fact. But there are many other possible interpretations besides that one. The second key is to resist the temptation to jump to conclusions and suspend judgment until after we've gathered more facts. Use our fundamental, listen to understand, and be curious and ask open-ended questions. Once we have the complete picture, more choices and options become clear. Then we can decide upon the best course of action. Here's a simple way to think about this fundamental. Be quick to ask and slow to judge. Just think about how practicing this fundamental can impact you at home as well as at work. This week, let's put an extra emphasis on slowing down our judgment and getting more curious.